I am Joe Sabiri, and I was in the Special Forces Reserve, and I served my 6 years. I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force career. He actually joined the Army and switched over to the Air Force. When that changed, I have a twin brother. He's a 10-year Air Force Air Force. So now he lives in Seattle. He's retired. Um, I've been in this business since I was a teenager. I actually started art school when I was between summers of junior and senior year, so I knew what I wanted to do, commercial art. Uh, and went to art school, went to Chicago on their first field trip. I went looking for a job, found a job, so I quit school. So, and my military experience, I just said that by the time that I joined, it was late 60s, and we, Special Forces, were all coming back, and it was the RAs, regular Army, were all going over. So it turned into a real war, not a overt action. So I've been doing what I do now since 50 years. So somewhere around there.
My name is Richard Barnett, Richard William Barnett. I was in the United States Navy, retired in 2005 after almost 21 years. However, I was broken service. I went in for 4 years, got out, went back to school, meaning that I'd actually gone to college before going in the Navy. And that's a long story. But then I went back in the Navy, finished out 20 years, retired in 2005. I was a hospital corpsman, ended up being an independent duty corpsman. Served in pretty much every different platform the United States Navy had, overseas, shore, shipboard, last state that was independent at San Nicolas Island for a bit, and my last deployment was with 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines in Iraq. And one of the front of the one of the probes going into Baghdad. Started out when I first went to college as a theater major, studying stage design and scene painting, and had every plan to go into IATSE before that completely blew up in my face through my own idiocy. But so I ended up in the Navy. And I've been painting ever since. I was pretty much dragged into art by the head of the art department because they saw a show that I had painted. That ended up being when I went back to school after my first 4 years in the Navy. I went to School of Visual Arts in New York to study illustration. Went back in the Navy when I ran out of money because I'd actually gone to New York with about $600 in my pocket. And I managed to make it for about 2 years. And then I went back in the Navy because eating on a regular basis seemed like a much better idea. That and actually having a roof over my head because it was about 2 weeks from being evicted. But in intermediate, in between times, I painted as I could, being in the Navy and never in one place for more than 18 months at a time for 20 years does not necessarily make for a great art career. I didn't really settle down to paint seriously, put that word in quotes, till after I divorced my wife, my first wife. And so that was about 8 years ago, 9 years ago, 10 years ago. And since then, I've been painting as often as possible, which basically is every day.
My art career is this long, and my military career was that long. So it's kind of the opposite. My military career interrupted my career. So, and it was a good deal. I think everybody should go. I think the draft system should come back. It gives everybody a point of perspective, if nothing else.
I could be creative. I could not necessarily be an artist for a couple of reasons. My job is an independent duty corpsman. How do you describe that? It's sort of like a nurse practitioner or a PA, but with a narrower scope of care. And in all the places in the world you don't necessarily want to be. And you don't necessarily have a lot to take with you. There were a couple of times, like there was a period when I was in lodges in the Azores, and there was a time when I was in Diego Garcia for an extended period of time, like 6 months or a year, when there was an opportunity to do work, but you don't necessarily have the resources. Like, okay, when you're in Diego Garcia, how are you going to buy paint? or what are you going to paint on? That was a struggle for a long time. What am I going to do? So I ended up doing work on paper, so I could at least transport it, keep it with me. But for almost 20 years, everything I owned could either go in a sea bag or in the back of my car, and I could drive away. Everything I owned literally fit in my car.
For a lot of those, a lot of that time, I was just waiting. Am I going to go? Am I not going to go? What's going on? So my military career, once they found out my passion, my gift, then I was illustrating. I was doing portraits of the brass. I was doing illustrated 10 general orders. I was doing an event stuff. I was doing all that stuff. I think I took, I can't remember, it was ridiculous the amount of I did not take, because I was back in the barracks or in some lieutenant's office doing something. So, and I had no desire to keep a journal, to keep up with, if nothing else, just what Richard said about just a piece of paper, just drawing. If I would have had it to do over again, yes, I would have drawn more. I would have a sketchbook for my entire life. My military experience, as I said, I was a military brat. My dad was stationed at Wright-Patterson, Dayton, Ohio, the whole time. He had an extended career from Hawaii from the second to a Korean War and all the other stuff. And yeah, it did affect me, maybe not in the look, style, tone, feel of my art, but it affected me in the structure and the mission mentality and things like that. I still have that. I wish I could abandon that sometimes, but
By that, do you mean the way you approach doing work, or?
it's the way I execute work. It's not necessarily the way I approach work. That's wide open. But it's the way I execute. For me,
In process?
I find it tough coming from the commercial art side. I find it hard to be an artist. I'm a commercial artist. I'm confident in that. But to be an artist, they're two different things to me. And sometimes I wear the artist hat or not. And sometimes I wear the commercial hat. It's very similar, but it's my mindset before I start.
That's funny. I tried to be a commercial artist and failed absolutely miserably at it. And yet I paint my backside off.
Yeah, I envy you from that standpoint. I envy artists who are artists, what I consider artists. I have that
How would you
trait
make that definition?
gene or albatross constantly trying to forego all of the structure, all of the rules, all of the things. I have too much. Uh, I have to unlearn a lot of stuff. So I've spent, and to me that's typical, especially as a human, as an artist, especially you want to learn all this stuff. Feed me, and then you get about halfway through, and then you try to unlearn it all and get back to being a innocent, a virgin again. So I don't know. Several artists go through that. I think people in general go through that. So.
If you don't mind me asking, how would you define an artist?
What do I define an art? Someone who expresses themselves visually. For me, I know that's music. I know that's acting. I know it's all the other stuff. I've always had an issue with like YouTube. I put in something artist, and then I get this rapper, or I get an actor, or I get something, and I'm saying, well, that's not an artist to me. An artist is somebody who does this. So I know that's just my own little idiosyncrasy, but
It seems to be one of those words that everybody defines slightly differently, and I don't think there is a bad definition of it. It's just a personal definition.
yeah, it is. And I don't consider writers that way, and I don't think they're defined that way. I don't think of a writer as an artist, but it's just a singer, it's a dancer, it's an actor, it's a whatever. Anyway, well, it comes from the commercial art side. I've got specs: how big, what size, what proportion, how many colors, blah blah blah. And here's what has to fit. Here's what you have to leave room for. Here's it's a guide. I just cannot. I'm not used to just starting. Oh, look, there's a blank wall. I think I'm just going to go visually express myself.
When you talk commercial art, are you talking illustration or are you
Yeah,
talking?
in those days, commercial art was art for money, which meant I was a hoe because I did art for money. But then
I
the
wish.
line blurred. We used to call it two different things: commercial art and editorial art. Editorial art was for all the artists, and they got published in Playboy, and they got published in Esquire, and they got published in the New Yorker, the mags, or wherever. Commercial artists were a wrist. We were called wrists. So how many frames you need by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning of this storyboard? Oh, I need 120 frames. Oh, sure. Or
Okay.
it was always due at 9 o'clock in the morning because that was the absolute deadline. But they always had time for changes. So,
Okay.
the military, military upbringing and my military service actually prepared me well for the commercial art business, art for money side of it. Much better than if I'd have gone to art school, and I did not go to a college. I went to an art school. I went to a 2 year. I went to what they call as a tech school now. I had a book when I came out. I had a portfolio I could go get a job with.
God, I wish I'd been prepared like that.
I was lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I went to a school that was supposed to do that, and no, didn't work. When I was in, uh, at some point, I started doing portraits for people. Um, Joe is saying that he ended up doing portraits of the people around him as well. We were stuck in Diego Garcia, which is literally 6.5 hours by air from anything else. It's in the middle of the Indian Ocean, equidistance between Madagascar and India and Australia. So literally, there's a whole bunch of water and nothing else. And it's hot. And so I had pastels and I was doing, and some oil portraits of the people around me. When I got out, let's just say that my last little part of being in the military, that deployment to Iraq, was not conducive to extremely good mental health. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to process it, so I just kind of ignored it. I transitioned over into being a nurse, and that kind of kept me moving in one particular direction. But Stacy, my partner now and has been for the last 8 years, encouraged me to do something to improve my own mental health, and said there were a couple of things I needed to deal with. There was a photograph that was taken of me when I was in Iraq that ended up being on the cover of just about every frickin' paper in the country, and which will probably dog me for the rest of my life. And there were a number of problems with that photograph, not only the fact that it was taken out of context and used for propaganda, but that a lot of people's images were taken out of context and used for propaganda for that particular conflict. And my own behavior having to do with all of that, it all tied up into a mess. And I had to deal with it. So at one point, I spent about a year, the entire year, working on a painting about that. I literally reproduced the actual image, 48 by 60, kind of a big painting, and developed what I wanted to say, what I consider the real story of the entire issue, not only what happened, but my own culpability, and found a way to incorporate that into the painting by painting that over the painting, which again was somewhat meticulous. And that year, continuously working with that image, which had been dogging me for a long time, to some degree helped me process my way through it. That was, and since then I've done a number of paintings having to do with the military. Most of them are not as personally significant. I still consider probably that's my best painting because it was most about me. I had to do that painting because, well, full disclosure, I guess I have a mental illness anyhow. I'm clinically depressed. I got to deal with medication on a daily basis just to keep myself from being stupidly depressed. And it works. But you get something like all the stuff that went around that painting, or I'm assuming something that happens to somebody in another situation. If you have a thought or an experience that you can't get out of your head, doing what Joe was talking about is ideal. But for me, it took about a year of continually living with that image that had been haunting me, almost overexposing myself to it, examining it in minute freaking detail, to allow it to scar over, for want of a better expression. On a personal level, yes, except that we live with that painting every day. It's big and it's in the house. But it's also a reminder, because there was some of my own behavior that was involved. There's something weird about, I'm sorry, Joe, I'm monopolizing this. I apologize.
No, that's cool.
There's something seductive and somewhat evil about celebrity or being the center of attention. You all of a sudden find yourself acting in a way that you wouldn't necessarily approve of. That photograph ended up being, it was a tragic moment. Let's just put it that out there. It was an truly awful moment that got taken and used as propaganda. And I just happened to be there. I was the subject of the photograph. I had nothing to do with making the photograph, but I was the subject of the photograph. So all of a sudden, for some reason, the photograph became about me. All right, that's dangerous, because all of a sudden people are giving you attention that you don't deserve, and you start acting like you deserve it, and you start speaking or attempting to speak with authority and gravitas that you don't actually have, or you start using it for your own benefit. And unconsciously, I sort of slid into that, even though I was trying not to, for a short period of time. And then my distaste with my own actions afterwards, whenever I see that photograph, there's a very real feeling of shame. And that photograph, because it was one of the photographs of that particular conflict, is never going to go away. It's going to pop up for the rest of my life, whether I want it to or not. And I keep on hearing this word hero. Anything I was that is the literal opposite of what I was. I happened to be there doing my job. That was in no sense a hero, especially when I know friends of mine who actually were. A friend of mine, Carlos Coleman, actually was out there in the middle of a mortar barrage treating patients and never moved away from it when there were mortars dropping around him, and one actually went into the ground 15 feet from him, and the only reason he's alive is it was plowed earth. It went down and blew up versus turning him into hamburger. But he never stopped doing his job. Those guys are heroes. I was a guy who did my frickin' job. And when you have that kind of shit that you need to process, whether it's that or having done something in combat or experienced something which I've now, since I've been in medicine, actually begin to understand, when you get a traumatic experience in association with a lot of adrenaline, it can go permanently, almost like a snapshot, into your memory. And you'll remember it that way, crystal clear, for the rest of your life.
You can't unsee it.
And you can't undo that memory. There's no do-over. And that comes, especially if it's a bad memory or something sincerely negative associated with it, it haunts you. And you have to find a way to deal with being haunted by something which you cannot forget. And it's always a complex set of images, and that everything that happened during that and everything that you experience afterwards. So what Joe was talking about was quite profound in finding a way for people who have those things to express, deal with them, examine them in a way that allows them to get a personal handle on them.
It's almost like exorcism in a way.
Not a bad description.
Yeah. I've been involved with Gold Coast Veterans Foundation for quite a while. We did a bunch of ad hoc stuff for them. And I've always wanted to, for vets who are having issues, to get it out, whether it's exercise, whether it's a dog, a horse, a book, write, paint, do it visually, do it some way. Anyway, my expertise or my history would be, yeah, get it out visually. I don't care if it's sculpture. I don't care if it's throwing stuff. I don't care if it's painting stuff. I don't care what it is. I'm not going to teach them how to paint. Here's the rule of thirds, and here's this. And it's not going to make any difference. I'm just going to get them set up so they're comfortable so they will have success with whatever medium it is. So get it out. There's no judgmental, just like you did. You got rid of some of those, whatever. You got rid of some of your baggage by getting it out, by expressing it visually. And that's all I want to do with them.
Mhm.
It's to just, okay, let's just get started. That's a hang up for a lot of people. Let's just do something. Just do it. You got time later to say it sucks. Or
It's about
it's,
the process rather than the product.
huh?
Process rather than the product.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my advice. I could be glib or humorous and say, or cynical and say, if somebody came to me, my son, oh, I want to be a blah, blah, I'd break his thumbs. So I could. So, and now it's all digital. You know, I have the luxury of being a dinosaur in the old world, before computers, before digital, and now. And I embrace it. I embrace failure. I tell all my students that. I said, get over it. What do you do when you fail? You learn something. What's the point of any of this? To learn something, to have a reason to get up in the morning, for God's sake. Hey, what can I think every day dog in my previous life. So I just get up and it's all, what are we going to do today? Find something new, discover something new. That's great. That keeps me going. Get up and try. Somebody just asked me that, and I'll shut up. I said, what do you do? What's the secret of life? I get up every day and I try. I don't care if I'm successful. I don't care what I try, but I try. You just said something that's important. What person is this? What type of personality is this person? Are they risk reward? Or are they analytical? What kind of person are they? Because Richard knows in this discipline, oh, don't do watercolor. It's too hard. You got to do it right the first time and all the other crap. And I say, oh, wow, it's so cool. It makes you look better as an artist because it gives you, just paint half a painting. Just get it started. It'll paint itself. And it does if you trust it. But there's a lot of people that they want to put down every brush stroke. I am not good enough to put down every brush stroke. I need the other half of the painting painted. I know I can go fix it because I went to commercial art school. So anyway.
I would make one suggestion for what it's worth. Try to be before you do this, try to be as clear on what you're actually trying to accomplish as possible and how you want to do it. Because if I'm right, if I'm getting this correctly, the people, you're going to get a wide range of people you're going to be dealing with, some who are just interested in and doing something in the process. But you're going to get some people there who have been looking for a way to deal with something which really sits in the back of their head like a monkey.
Yep.
And those are the really important ones.
Yep.
And the last thing you want to do is scare them away. Those are the ones that you really want to find a way to reach and help them in any way possible.